It's time for another computer cases full of fail. Today we've got the Dell Dimension 8250 here in particular, but it was pretty much a whole range of dimensions. I think it was like the 8200 series, an 82 or 8000 series. I think I want to say it was that entire series. They all pretty much had the same case design, and I really don't know what Dell was thinking too much on these, but they got some fail in them. Time frame, you'd have probably seen these around. You can tell based off of the processor here and the Windows XP Design 4 logo. This was right when Windows XP came out. And, these systems would have had probably 256 megs of RAM standard. Lucky if you got a higher end one, it had 512. So they just barely ran Windows XP. They were a little bit on the slow side in that regard. They just needed a little bit more RAM, especially nowadays. Probably one of the more annoying features of this thing is where the front USB ports are. You lift that little front cover up, and there is your USB port. So it is at a crazy angle here, and when you got this thing on your floor, as you can see, that covers it up, so you can't even see it there. Then you gotta, even if you did get under here, all you're seeing is, USB port at some crazy angle like that. Then you gotta try and figure out which way you gotta orient it. And this is taking the camera all the way up here just so you can see it, and you're still having trouble seeing it. You also see there's a headphone jack there. But more notably, if I bring it back a little bit, you see there's really no room for ventilation here. You just have those little bit of slots you see there at the top, there and there, and that's not really much. And if you go along the side, you see there's no ventilation there, and no ventilation on this side. On the back, spin this guy around for you. You see you got lots of holes in the back. You got your standard power supply. I shouldn't say standard. Again, Dell did one of their little proprietary things at the time, which was to go through and have this exact little cutout for the power supply hole, and kind of an odd mounting bracket system here. And yes, this is how it came. Usually one screw holding the whole thing in, yet another one up here, but the other two were generally just left empty. This is actually like a little clip, so to say. The fan here is recessed. I'll show you that in a minute. And then we just got extra holes there. Standard old age stuff. You got the PS2 port and the mouse. And it came with a heck of a lot of USB ports for its time. You're talking 6. That's a lot for back then. Your sound card usually was an add-in. I do believe they made a model where they did have sound actually on the motherboard, but this one does not have it. And your graphics card could vary in any multitude of ways. But as I was saying about the power supply, because the way it's done here, you're really limited in what you can actually put into the system here. If you get a power supply, if a power button, switch, forget it. A lot of times you try and put another power supply into this, you gotta file off corners or take some tin snips, and it's a mess. Now for the next piece, I'm going to have to do a jump cut for you. Alrighty, I already kind of opened it up so I could make this easier for you, but the way this case opens up is not like a standard case where you either slide it towards you or you just lift it up. No, this has, see this little kind of groove here? Well, you got one just like it here. And to open up this case, you have to push both of them in at the same time. Yes, that's right, both sides, this side and this side here, both have to be pressed in, and then you can actually lift it up. And a key thing is, and I should really do this with two hands, but keeping it opening up evenly so that it doesn't bind or anything like that. Now the problem with this case's opening mechanism is sometimes these plastic bits that are those handles, those sometimes get broken. As you can see, it's just a piece of plastic that's kind of clipped in here. Sometimes those break. Sometimes these metal pieces here, which are kind of like the latch itself, those get bent, or the user somehow tries to force their way in and jacks them up pretty bad. Then you actually have this mechanism here. Sometimes this gets broken off, or it gets completely jacked up one way or the other. So if one of these sides don't work, you really can't open the system up. Or if they break in the wrong way, it never closes. This one is kind of one of those that doesn't want to close all the way. You got to kind of force it down. It's kind of unfortunate, but that's what happens. And then we got this whole mess here of how they did the wiring. Now, as you see, all the drives actually kind of just slide in and click, and I don't have a problem with that, but the problem is, as far as I could see for Dell, is there's going to be a higher manufacturing cost. You got to make all these little plastic clips. You got to screw everything in. You got to provide extra ones for the user in case they want to put in additional drives. You have all these extra proprietary cables. I mean, look at this. This is a USB cable for the front ports. I've never seen a USB cable look like that, nor should it need that many wires. I mean, that's like 20 wide at least. So, don't know what the deal is there. But all the cables pretty much run up and then they try and go over, with the exception of the CD drives, which some of them, they try and go up against this and then over, and some of them are, like this one here, they're just all over the place. As you can see, the power supply, the cords on that are pretty short. It's really one of those, if you put something else that isn't made for this system in here, you're kind of asking for trouble. You're going to have too much cable. It's not going to close right. Of course, you got the extra audio ports for CD drives, all that. You don't really have too much space in here for expansion, but it's still pretty good for what it was at the time. And this here is our mechanism for actually closing in PCI cards. Now this one's a little bit better than what they used to do, because this actually has, you can probably not see it here because of the lighting, this thing's casting a shadow. There's a screw hole here, there's no screw in it, but it's good because this being a plastic piece and this only being a little plastic hook to clip in, you can at least override it, put a screw in, and lock it down. And now, this is your cooling. That's right, a single fan, and it's sharing this one fan for pulling out all your exhaust with your processor. As you see, this is your processor heatsink. There is no fan on it. This is still kind of a popular design with some gateways nowadays. I think Dell still uses this in some of their newer systems too, where it's just a fan sitting at the back. They put a little shroud over it, and that's your cooling for your entire heatsink. But unfortunately, it's also your only fan that you can put in this system, besides, of course, your power supply fan. So this thing's cooling everything in your system. It's held in with a little plastic bracket. Don't have much of a problem with it, but, and you can't really see it here, but a lot of these were held in with rubber feet. Best way to describe it is, you got like these two little rubber pegs at the top, two more at the bottom. Instead of having screws that you screw the heatsink into the plastic shroud, it's just these rubber pegs. So if that fan ever goes, you can't really replace the fan. You have to replace this whole shroud unit, which you buy from Dell for a god-awful amount of money. So there's more design fail for you. But yes, this is real lovely system when it comes to opening up too, because this isn't opened up all the way. It almost goes up to almost a full 90 degrees in some of them, because of the way the hinge works here. It's actually want to keep going back, but I don't have the room here to let it keep going. But you get the idea. It's another case full of fail, and hopefully one of the designers of this thing will see this video one day, or somebody will go through, watch my video on these horrible cases and realize these cases should never, ever, see how it doesn't want to close? Ever be designed in ways like this. So, until next time, I'll see you later.